What is going on, my YouTube friends, all my Click friends? How we all living today? I saw my friend Elizabeth sent me a video of Tyler's home studio, and the 21 Pilots group reminded me that I'd been meaning to watch this. We got 21 Pilots drummer Josh Dunn's epic home studio, and I think it's cool. I think it's really cool when you have drummers, because they effectively have to build their room around their drum kit. Like you don't really like find a room and go, a drum kit would sound really good in here, or it'd be really easy to mic a drum kit in here, because it's weird. Like, it's really weird to try to get a sound, or like the sound that your drum kit makes, and recreate it for a studio. It's really weird. I don't know really how else to describe it. We'll do a drum mix one day live. I just got to get permission from an artist, and we'll do that, because it's really weird. I don't know how else to describe it. I can see like in this initial scene here that we got like some big, I think these are some Shure overheads, but we'll talk about it, because like typically when you have microphones on drum kits, you have like a snare drum and a microphone right here, because you don't want it to pick up all the bleed from all the drums and the cymbals and stuff. The problem is I don't listen to a snare drum this close. Like, my ear has never been that far away from a snare drum, ever. And so when that's where your microphone placement is, you have to do some clever things to make it sound like what your ear expects it to be at maybe like 15, 20 feet, right? And anyway, that's a whole conversation. We'll get into it. I'm real excited to get into this. Patreon links in the description box. You can hit me up here on YouTube. Drop your comments down below. Let me know what you think. If you had any takeaways, man, I've been having a down couple of days. So if you have any takeaways from this video, I would love a little bit of a boost. Let me know what you liked, what you found interesting. Hit me up down below, and let me pull this up for y'all, and let's watch this. You see how high those mics were? Like, when it starts with the pan down, like, I don't know how, I'm sure he'll tell us how high the ceiling is, but like, they're way up there.
Josh?
I saw the home tour, so I've seen bits and pieces of this, but I haven't seen specifically the studio yet. So
Why are we sitting in a boxing ring?
Well, we're in Columbus, Ohio. My wife and I just moved here about a year and a half ago. We moved back from LA, where I was for about 7 years, and she was for probably 14 years. I wanted a place that I didn't have to leave the house. And so if I didn't have a boxing ring here, I would have to leave the house. So put in a boxing ring. It's right outside of the studio. So figured, what a great place to talk about the studio right behind us than in the boxing ring right outside of it.
You
Crazy wall.
lived in Columbus for your entire childhood, correct?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Columbus, and we started touring, and then I met a girl, and she lived in LA. I'd never lived outside of Columbus. I never really planned on moving. You know, people leave their home city, home state, because they're just like tired of it or sick of it or hate it. And that was never the case for me. I've always loved this city, but I was excited to try something new for a bit.
So then we make the transition, we move out to Los Angeles, and we had created a studio for you, more of just a studio in a box. We didn't create the room, we just put up some treatment and then gave you all the gear that was necessary to track. But I think it's really cool that we're back in Columbus.
Once we...
So basically what he's saying is, like, I saw this in like the B-roll stuff earlier. He's got like this is a full studio. Like, he's got guitar profilers, like top of the line. He's got processing. It looked like he had some like channel strips, which you could use for like drum buses. Lately, I've been seeing him on vocal buses more than drum buses. But this is gonna be a really interesting video, I feel like. And who's the buddy interviewing him? Is he from Sweetwater, or is he someone with 21 Pilots? Because he keeps saying that we built, and this is a Sweetwater video. So I'm curious, man. That'd be really cool.
Thought about moving, and I had the studio at the house there. It's kind of like, you know, you get something and then you can't really go back from that. And I was like, how am I gonna have a place without a studio? I think that's when the conversation started, is kind of just imagining living in a different place without kind of my drum world.
Right. It's a multifaceted studio that addresses obviously drums, but do you want to get into some of the other elements too that the studio's capable of operating in.
Yeah, absolutely. My wife also, she does acting. And so,
voiceovers.
A big part of what she does is after any TV show or movie is done, there's a process called ADR. It's either replacing dialogue or adding dialogue after everything's been shot. Sometimes they'll change a line completely once everything's done. I wanted to be able to have the ability and the control to do all of that in here as well.
Cool.
Not only that, but Debbie does a podcast, and so we would record that in the studio in LA. So we were like, hey, let's create an opportunity to record a podcast here, maybe even do video podcast. And
cool.
You can plug the mic right in. It's patched. You enable that mic, and you're good to go.
That was fun in the creation of the studio. It was almost like another phone call. It's like, hey, we forgot one more thing. It's like, we got to do ADR. And then a week later, it's like, oh yeah, the podcast. So there was just more and more wall plates that we were putting.
And see, like, you'd think that the ADR stuff and the podcast would be similar. Spoken word, you needed to be a clean take, edited after the fact. It's different though. And you probably want the room set up differently. Like for the ADR stuff, you probably want like a very isolated, dead room. For the podcast, you want space, you want a bit of a scene. Like, I'm hoping I learned something from this video, man, because some of the stuff that they're overcoming are some of the struggles I currently have. So
the studio, but we had the opportunity to personalize the studio in every way to make it functional for you and your needs. And it's great that it's a tracking room for drums. We made it set up so we could do ADR, and then also the podcast in the back wall. I know when you had called me and we started talking about the personal nature of the room, it was weird. You kept sending images from Instagram. You're like, hey, I like this component, I like this element. And I think we started getting ideas from Instagram and other studios. I've been working with Gavin Haverstick of Haverstick Designs, and one thing that I love utilizing him for is because he's not like a cookie cutter studio builder. What I mean by that is there's a lot of builders who build studios that it's kind of like there's a template that they follow, and you can almost identify who the builder is by the end result. Gavin and I have been working together for years, and one thing I love on an artist side is he goes off of the personal requests of whoever we're working with. It's not.
that's cool, man, because like a lot of the time you'll have someone figure something out, and then it's basically like if there's anything else that's right, that proves me wrong, is kind of the mentality, right? So then they'll come in and they'll say, okay, what's your room look like? And they'll say, okay, we either have to scrap all this and gut it all and build it into the way that I want it, or like hire someone else, or I'll downsize this to something that I can manage, which is kind of like an old school, like that sounds like record label-y almost, doesn't it? Like the same kind of conversation there. But like if you get, like Adele did, I think it was Rolling in the Deep, they played the drums underneath her stairs because they just thought it was a vibe, and they were right. So like if you take a moment to like take in what is around you, and you address it in certain ways, there are ways to make your room cool, and then now it sounds like your room. It doesn't sound like someone else's build, it sounds like your room, right? So it's neat. That's really neat that they touched on that. And I also forgot that Buddy's from Neat Audio, because I was saying it like 1,000 times. But
like there's a trademark Haverstick studio. It's just always personalized to every detail that was required from the artist. In working with you, I realized instantly with the aesthetic nature that we were going for, that we needed someone with Gavin's personal touch.
Hi, Jim.
Hey,
cool
Jim.
drum kit.
Good boy. We've been involved in the project for a while and kind of going through different options and design elements. It started all with TJ from Neat. He got us involved in the project and introduced me to you, and kind of started from there, going around to some different houses and taking a look at some options. So.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, there was a bunch of septic lines on the areas that we were trying to build a studio, and nothing really worked out. And then we found this space, and I know that initially we talked about building an external structure here, and then that kind of evolved because we were just like, well, there's kind of plenty of space inside here. There's like a kid's playroom in there, and then this room, oddly enough, had a drum set in it when we came to, Debbie and I walked through the house the first time, and then it kind of turned into this room behind us.
I remember early on we even designed
Quite the transformation, from money to like money.
in some exterior structure, just basic layouts. I remember the live room, initially we had put a rock climbing wall in. I don't know if you remember that, but yeah,
That's
it's
right.
How dope.
It just made more sense once you got this house. There's a kind of ready-made spot for the studio, and there wasn't a whole lot of design changes. We came up with an initial concept. You wanted a control room, a drum room, and a vocal booth, and it just kind of fit like a puzzle in there. It's
Yeah.
really, really nice. So we're here in the control room. Obviously, the first
Very
thing you
cool.
see is the aesthetics, and that was all designed.
Beautiful looking room. The gumball thing is like aesthetics. The red's all matching. That's cool. I love this, like their energy, man. Like stuff like this is just neat.
With the help of Josh and Debbie and our renderings and dialing that in and getting the look and feel the way that we wanted it to. The first thing you'll see is the centralized location for the mix position here, and you want symmetry in a control room. When we designed this space, we canted out the walls and gave them some angles so that first reflection points were minimized, and also widened the room just because control rooms are always the spot where people congregate the most. It's almost like the kitchen.
So we'll hang out in the control room until 8 in the morning. You don't even notice the sun came up because we're just working on 4 bars or whatever, right? So when you sit in the middle, you typically put yourself in the middle and a few feet back off the wall. Like I think it's like a third of the way back between your long points, and then you want your walls to be matched as well. So I used to be off to one side of my room, and it literally, when I listened to music, it felt like I was leaning. Like the speakers are the same, the position the same, it's the same audio output, but like there's different pickup points for your ear, right? So you want it to be as neutral as possible. The glass in front of them is probably like double or triple plane. There's probably space in between there, vacuum space, unless they put like a booth or something in there. I didn't quite see, but there'll be distance between that because glass is really loud, and you don't want, like when you're in the control room, you want to be able to hear all the elements of the things happening. You don't want to just hear a crashing drum kit, right? Like otherwise, like why would you build this big, huge studio and just have it be chaotic, right? And then the first reflection points, so like that's like, you can't see it, but I got a speaker like basically beside the camera looking at me, and as that makes noise, goes out the different directions and stuff, it's gonna hit the flat surfaces of my wall and reflect back. And no, you don't hear that necessarily, but what it does is it causes phasing issues and like frequency disruption points where like they're both fighting, or multiple pinpoints are fighting for the same thing, and it almost like stills out. I don't know how else to describe it. It's like if the frequency is vibrating and another one's vibrating, they hit each other, it almost like stops it. Now there's no sound there. So you might have over driving or like over processed frequencies that you're not hearing, or you're trying to dig out that you're not hearing, and then you go listen to it in a car and it sounds totally different, right? So they're just addressing a lot of that stuff by putting angles on the walls. You just want stuff. That's the big thing. You just want stuff. But anyways, let's keep going.
When you have a party at home, so we wanted to make it big enough to feel comfortable, but also angling the walls helps acoustically. So we modeled that out, doing ray tracing
Looks
and
great.
making sure that we optimize those angles.
This room was a lot of fun for me because he gave me control over what kind of equipment we wanted in regards to preamps,
Yeah.
compressors, and converters. Let's start.
This is a guitar amp. This is a Kemper. This is a Universal Audio. Is this I think this is their LA2A compressor. Oh no, this is a 1176. Yeah, it's got the buttons. So you can actually smash all these buttons, smush all these buttons, and they all go in. This is the ratio. So right now it's set 4:1. But you can smush them all in. Yeah, that's another conversation too. This is really nice. This looks like it's, I'm not too sure what that is. $4,000 plus right here, just in these two. The guitar amp thing, the rack mount one's like 3,600. Yeah, this is really nice.
Start with the chassis first. Everything is inside of a Danger Fox desk. Shout out to Aaron. You were immensely helpful in us getting this desk in time. It's a mastering style desk, but we loved it because it gave Josh the ability to reach everything at his fingertips without having to move around in the room. It's quick and easy for a one-man show.
I don't know what this is. This looks like an Apollo, but I've never seen it with a screen on it. And this is just a patch bay. So it's like, if you're mixing something and you want this compressor versus a different compressor, you can like wire this so that all of a sudden it's feeding into these compressors now. Yeah, it's the whole thing.
As far as gear's concerned, we have a lot of Neve in the desk, simply due to the fact that Josh and I started going. As far as gear's concerned, we have a lot of Neve in the desk.
A lot of Neve in the desk. That's such a flex. Like Neve stuff is so freaking nice.
Due to the fact that Josh and I started going through some of his favorite albums and some of his favorite drum tones, and we found more often than not there was Neve involved in the tracking
preamps,
process.
yep.
So I've got a bunch of 517s, 511s, and 1073s in this desk.
Cool. So here's the preamp. This is the same kind of preamp I use because of stuff like this. Oh man, and they hit that hard too. So there's kind of two ways you can play I'll do a video on this because, like I said, I have one of these. There's two ways you can kind of play with this. One is you gun this red knob. This is like distortion or saturation, and then you slowly turn up the input until you get what you want. The other one is that you crank up the output, I guess, and then you slowly start turning up the distortion until you get what you want. And like they're hitting these really hard, man. They're hitting these harder than I usually do. This is an API. I don't know what this is. Like a channel strip, I guess. This is all really cool, man. Kick out, overhead left, kick right. Or sorry, I'm getting all over the place. Kick in, overhead right. So this must be channel strips.
On the top left of the desk, I've got a BAE 1073. Just a classic vocal preamp and an amazing DI. So.
Oh, they're using it for a DI too. Okay, yeah, we tracked bass for this. I could show you guys that another time too. We tracked a 1976 Fender bass for this. But yeah, so this is the distortion essentially, and then the output. So you can either crank this all the way up and then slowly bring in the distortion, or you can crank the distortion and you can slowly turn up the output. And like, there's a million different ways to do that, but that's kind of like what we've been playing with lately.
So I just had to have one in the studio for him, and I wanted it to be a tool at his fingertips. Neve Shelford was the second choice. I've got the Neve Shelford actually patched into the drum room as a ADR preamp for Debbie. When she comes in here to do all of her voiceover, I just wanted a clean, concise preamp for her and to have EQ and compression at his fingertips, just to hit it on the tracking side and incoming, just to sweeten the sound, if you will.
Yeah, it makes the performance better if it sounds good in your head. So like, even if it's just Debbie talking, they probably have like a nice mic for her, like a U87 or something, like a real nice tracking microphone. But you want it to be clear and bitey because microphones don't really sound nice just by themselves all the time. They're very like dynamically sensitive, like they balance frequencies differently, they pick up frequencies differently. So if you just have like one unit that it just sounds good in, you get like, you know what you're expecting, you don't have to change anything, and you can kind of not worry about the audio, then it's good, right? So here, let me pull mine up. Let me, can I do it quick? Can I do it quick? I believe I can. Filters, open. So this is my Neve preamp. It's like it's the Slate version of it. This is my 1176. This is my API EQ, and this is my Neve EQ. So like it's like these are staples. Like I don't know how else to describe that to you. They had this cranked up way more, but probably for some other reasons. But anyways, it's just like staples. They're just
Going into the preamps for the drum set, we've got a number of 511s, and then I've got a couple 517s in there as well. I've got the 517 on kick in and snare top just to have a little dynamic control, and then the rest is all ran 511. We'll go over the drum setup here in a second, but I've got two Coles 4038s as overhead over the entire kit, and I've got
I thought those were Shure mics.
but I've got two Coles 4038s as overhead over the entire kit, and I've got those running in the 511s, out of 511s into the 1176s that you see behind me.
Cool. So the microphones are roof mounted. That makes sense. These ones here, they're flat. Overhead mics you want to be like a condenser microphone, and it's essentially picking up all the like brittleness of the drum kit. It's right above the drum kit. It's giving you that distance because it's like 10 feet or so from like the snare drum, right? And they're positioned in a spot so that when you hit the snare drum, it hits that microphone and that microphone at the exact same time, like the wavelength, right? And then feeding those into the 1176s is dope because it's just going to give you like balanced goodness, I guess. I don't know.
Here in a second, but I've got two Coles 4038s as overhead over the entire kit, and I've got those running in the 511s, out of 511s into the 1176s that you see behind me, and then that just goes obviously into the conversion. At the top of the middle section, it's not really studio related as much as it is for all the stuff we do on the road. It's a Distriplizer, and it is basically just a time code reader. We embed SMPTE time code into all of our playback tracks for lighting cues, pyro, and everything that we do live. And Josh works on those tracks in the studio. So I put a Distriplizer in the center so he can make sure that time code is scrolling and adequately inputted into the session. Josh,
It's like a universal clock that will manage all your consoles, like everything for the show. You can run everything off of it. So as long as you're designing it to that, then it'll all be right. Because like you got to think that parts of a second is also parts of a beat. You know what I mean? And if you have like a big shot on one and it misses, or like you're just late in something else, like you can't have that. So you need like universal time, right?
Josh not being a guitar player, but still having people that'll come over to play guitar, I wanted him to have a Kemper in here. It's just my go-to. It sounds fantastic. And
Oh
it's
my
a great
God, yeah.
asset and a tool for anyone in the studio.
Yeah, so all that is just replaced all the guitar amps. So you used to have an isolation booth where you had like insulation and all your cabinets and everything all like in basically like a packed away in the garage so nobody could hear it because you had to turn the guitar amp so loud just to make it sound good in a recording, that they went and replaced them with things called like profiling amps. So someone else in a nicer studio than you and I can afford recorded a nicer guitar amp than you and I can afford. You know what I mean? And now you can have the profile for it. You can play it. And my goodness, it sounds good. I played on one in my live band for 2 years. And the band I toured with, we did an orange amp and a Kemper. And like, unbelievable. And then, like I said, like there's no real volume involved. Like there's no guitar amp. You have to send it through like a headphone or like a studio speaker. So for jamming and stuff, like, I'm not even going to downplay it and say that it's perfect for jamming because it's way overkill for jamming, but like it makes a dope opportunity.
The studio is based around PMC 6.2s and a 6.1 sub. We chose the PMC because of the built-in DSP into the speaker. I didn't want to put it...
digital speaker processing, DSP. So that just basically means that like in each room, everything's going to sound different. So my room is very high. It's very brittle in the high end. Like when you snap in here before I did my room dampening, it like was brittle to the ear. So in the DSP, you could go through and you could find the frequencies that you don't like and you could just start ducking them. You could just start pulling down little bits so that it feels more flat or it feels more accustomed to what you'd like or anything like that. If you want more sub, less sub, if you need more 12, like I think you can, depending on the DSP and the setup, you can go into each individual component of the speaker and turn up bits and pieces of it. So like I could have the tweeter, the horns, the really high stuff. I could turn that up. I could turn the subsection of my main two-way speaker up, but leave the sub on the floor, my actual subwoofer. I could leave that at the vault. Like there's limitless, right?
Trinov or an Intonato in front of the speakers, and I could utilize the DSP built into the PMCs to create actually zones in this room. Josh's mixed position, obviously flat, but I wanted to create a separate zone for the couch. So if you had friends, management, label, what have you come over, I wanted to be able to set a separate EQ curve to kind of just heighten that experience for the couch listening environment, if you will.
So yeah, like when you're in the near field, the near range of it, like I'm only 2.5 feet from my speaker. That sounds different than if I'm at the back of the room. And the room sounds different. The room's got to breathe too. So now all of a sudden I'm showing the record label the demo, and it doesn't sound like when I had it mixed up here. That's a problem, right? You want it to sound spicy and nice and exciting so that they go, yeah, like it's good, right? Anyway.
Links Aurora 24N is a conversion. I've had links with Josh since the beginning. When we built his first studio, it was all links based. And then Tyler as well is all links in his studio. So I just wanted everyone to have the same converters on the front and back side. Grace M905, my go-to monitor controller of choice. Beyond that, the other really cool aspect of this studio, and again, we spoke about it earlier, I wanted this studio to be a turnkey solution, literally. We're using a Furman power sequencer. You literally just turn the key and everything boots up in sequence and down in sequence to make sure you're not getting any pops, clicks. But the important part is there's power boxes behind every speaker, the subwoofer, and the desk that makes it so literally every single thing turns on with one turn of a key.
That's really important. So there is a chain of command, as it were, that you need to turn things off. So like the sound console would be last in a live scenario. The loudspeakers are first. So like the amps for the loudspeakers are first. There's a series to it because otherwise things disconnect early in the chain and it pops or cracks and fries and stuff. So to have it like automatically shut down in its order, and it probably times things if it needs like a cool down period. That's dope. That's super cool. I didn't know they did that.
There's a lot of LED lights in this room. It allows us to do a lot of color changing to set the mood, and Josh was really big on that from the get-go, wanting to make sure that we were able to tailor the room however we wanted it to be given his mood that day. You know, so we can turn them all blue or turn them red. You know, there's infinite number of colors that we could choose from. On the back wall here, we've got a QRD diffuser that actually we designed it, but Griffey Construction did all of the construction of it. So we gave them the mathematical pattern, and him and his crew went to work and fabricated it on site here.
Basically, like, you know, the wall's 12 feet, so every, I don't know, 5.23 inches we need a breakup of this size, this width, this density, whatever, right? So they built the thing out just to absorb sound. It's just eating sound. That's all it's doing.
Next thing that happened after we kind of like came up with a design plan, a design element, was we get a local contractor to be able to kind of execute this. I didn't know how any of this worked either. I'm like, so what's Gavin gonna come in and cut down my walls or like put up walls? And so then we realized that Gavin's kind of the mastermind behind, you know, the kind of the architect of the whole thing. And then we need a contractor to come in and do all the, you know, kind of make it happen, follow those blueprints and those plans that Gavin came up with. And this guy Charlie came in, and he was beyond thorough. And he was like, why don't I come in and I'll just kind of poke around in this, you know, kind of cut some holes and make sure there's no like major structural things that would prevent us breaking down walls or adding walls or whatever. He's like, I'll just come in and do that for free. I think he called Gavin once or twice and was like, I was looking on page 403 of your blueprints and I found something that I didn't make total sense. And so after all that, we were like, I think it was kind of, this is the guy that should do it. I'm here with Charlie Griffey, who was the contractor on building this studio. I remember you told me that you'd never done a studio before, which I thought was cool because I think you still kind of exhibited so much sort of confidence and pride in your work.
I just really studied the plans and wanted to make sure I kind of somewhat knew what I was talking about. I mean, first time I got the opportunity, I knew I wanted to do it, and I knew I wanted to be involved and be a part of it. So
over the 7 months or so that it took to kind of get this thing from start to finish, I think we became friends. You were at my house pretty much every day for 7 months.
saw you in concert.
Yep. Yeah, came out to. Where did he go?
Kansas City.
Kansas City. He came out to Kansas City.
Yeah.
No, he was incredibly detailed, and the timing was perfect. I mean, working close with Charlie allowed me to know when my team was going to come in, because basically Gavin had set everything in motion. Charlie built the structure, and then once we got to the framing side of things, that's when I brought in my team. It's great. My team was actually Sweetwater. I brought in my sales engineer, John Krempel, and then I brought in another friend of mine that's also a sales engineer at Sweetwater. His name's Patrick Cobley. We came in one day after Charlie had set the framework, and we had pulled all the cables, and then after the next weekend, we had came and soldered everything. But we'll talk about the cathedral room later, but we had pulled the W2 Mass Connect and just working on a time frame because everything had to happen at a very specific time, and Charlie was great about scheduling all of that. And then we bring...
So you don't really want to go to the store for something like this and just buy like your standard, like I need 50 25-foot cables. Like they're going to come all wound up and ugly, and like they're building it, right? They're going to fish the cable, whatever that's called, through a conduit or whatever, and they're going to solder it at the point like it doesn't move. It's in there permanently, right?
Bring in Matt Call from Simplified Acoustics. He was the one that, correct me if I'm wrong, he was the one who wrapped all of the walls in the cloth, right?
Yes.
With this vocal booth here that we have, it's kind of multi-purpose. It's for voiceover work, but it's his brother's office. They play Warzone in there and Call of Duty, different things. One of the coolest elements in there, besides all the stretched fabric systems, very darker feel than any of the other spaces. But then there's also this custom fiber optic ceiling. Simplified Acoustics, Matt Call and his crew specialize in doing these ceilings. And one thing that they do that other companies a lot of times don't is that the fiber optic strands are cut at different heights so that when it's dark in there, you actually see some depth to the stars versus them all being at one single height.
We've got wall plates around the entire studio, and there's one behind these two screens here to my right. Shout out to Zane and Jumpers. Jumpers is responsible for all the wall plates in the studio and every single cable that we ran. Cool. Josh, once again, not being a vocalist, we built this room in case vocalists came over. We're gonna have a couple amps come in here shortly. So this is, again, one of those rooms that we wanted to have in the studio just in case we needed it.
So they could put guitar amps in here. It's just a dead room. So they got a 7B, great vocal mic, small lights for just like inspiration and the artsy Instagram photos or whatever. Like it is what it is, right? Desk. Like you don't need much. You just need to be dead and quiet. Like you can see like how thick these window panes are. You know what I mean? Like you don't want any outside noise coming in here. You just want it to be nice and dead.
I remember when Matt was done and it came time for gear day, as I'll call it. What was fun for me on this project specifically is, you know, a lot of studios that I build, you get tasked with a job, you come in, you put all the equipment, you make sure that it's running, and then at the end of the day, your client, artist, whoever you're building the studio for, comes in and observes the job done. What was unique about this project was working with you. And I know you're a gear guy, and I know that you enjoy the environment, but your involvement in actually building the studio with you, it kind of feels like it brings you even more involved and closer to this project.
You know, when we kind of outfitted that studio in LA, like you said, it was kind of already an environment kind of ready for that. But then you being far away, I remember I just got a big shipment of gear, including a desk that I had to put together. We worked on it together.
I need a friend like that.
Here's how you patch this, and run the snake over to your drums, and all this, you know, patching and labeling, and then.
Oh man, so like a snake is, you can get them in different sizes, variations. But say it's got 24 channels on it, you could plug like 2, 3, 4 foot cables into that, and then run one band of cables 100 feet to your control room, right? Instead of, like I said, going to the guitar store, buying 50, 100 foot cables, 2,500 foot cables, and stretching them all out and hoping they don't bend and kink. And then you got to figure out which one's broken. No. You get all these face plates and stuff. It's basically it's just patch based, so it's signal flow. So like my microphone goes into the wall plug that says vocal number 3. That runs in the walls and in the architecture, everything, all the way to the control booth. And then when I turn on vocal number 3, you have sound, right? Just clean ways of doing stuff.
Patch cables, all that stuff was a big learning process, but really fun, and also I think really important for me as somebody who mostly self-engineers in here, to be able to kind of know how to get things up and running. And if something's not working, I can troubleshoot it as much as I possibly can before having to call you. So yeah, I really enjoy kind of understanding the flow of everything and how it all works, so that I can kind of just come down here by myself and power everything up and get it running, and being able to just record and know that it's going to work.
So it looks like he's got, this is probably just like external and Bluetooth, so you could run, like I'm assuming this is just a secondary monitor to his computer, so he can make sure that he's recording, or he can control it from in here if he's doing stuff by himself. So he's got, this looks like it's a custom one. It might be, like Shure did make 90-degree SM57s, but some people custom molded them too. They'd like cut them and like all kinds of stuff. But that does look like a real one. The more I look at it, these are 421s, Sennheiser 421s, staples. They talked about the overhead mics already. Those will get like the cymbals and all this stuff. You won't see as many mics on the cymbals as say in like a live show. Yeah, really nice sounding drum kit.
Welcome to the drum room. Josh, would it be safe to say this is your favorite room?
In my house, before I had this, it was my bedroom. But now it's this room.
Very good. Yeah, I love this room. Obviously, the aesthetic nature of it. A lot of personal touches. This is the artwork done by Dabs Mila. It's also the same art that we have up in, you call it the cathedral room? Or?
Yeah, sunroom, cathedral room, tall room.
But the artwork continued down here, and I'm bringing up the artwork because it was a very important design element from my perspective. When I was bringing in all the hardware to set up for the microphones, I did not want to get in front of the entire kit with a bunch of mic stands. So shout out to Triad Orbit, really walked me through the process of what I would need to make a very minimal footprint in regards to the hardware.
You don't want to take away from the room, right? And on top of that, you don't want to choke up the drums either, because you're trying to record as much transients as available from the acoustic drum, right? And then the minute you put like a clamp and a heavy microphone on that clamp on a drum, you're restricting something. Something's being caught. The wood is not resonating somewhere, right?
Quickly addressing the overhead mics, we have them permanently suspended from the ceiling with Triad Orbit stands, and then Triad Orbit is also around the whole kit.
Cool.
One mic stand on the snare, top, bottom, and that stand is also holding the hi-hat mic. I've got one stand holding the two toms, the top tom and floor tom 1, and then kicked off of the crash on the right side of the kit, I have the third floor tom mic'd up. 421s on all the toms, 57 top and bottom snare.
And bottom. Oh, I see the hi-hat mic now. It's an 81, okay.
The Shure pencil condenser on the hi-hats, Audix D6, and then I want to give a shout out to Solomon Mics. I reached out to Henry from Solomon and asked him if he could do a low freak mic and also the phone freak mic, but wrap it in the same kind of material that we would have on the kit.
Cool, very cool. So this is like, if you look up a sub kick, it's basically like, you can get different sizes. Let's just say it's like 8 inches. It's like an 8-inch speaker turned backwards. So instead of projecting sound, it takes in sound, but it's big. Like instead of a microphone, like a little capsule, it's big, right? And all you get is like the subs. Whoop, whoop, whoop. That's all you get, right? They have an Audix D6 in there. Audixes sound like basketballs to me. I've never really gotten behind them, but hey, here we are. They also have the telephone mic. So all that is these are custom. So he just wanted a sub mic. This one's just a sub frequencies. The telephone mic is like that 800, 1K, 1.4K, where it's like kind of nasty and really brittle. But you get a lot of distortion out of that, a lot of clarity and a lot of distortion. And like if you think about it, when you're sitting at a drum kit, your ears are distorting like naturally, right? When you're beating the shit out of a drum kit like that close to it, your ears are limiting, they are distorting a bit. So having something give you that natural life and distortion makes a lot of sense. I first saw that with Silk Sonic. I didn't know these guys did it too, which is dope.
So the phone
That
freak
mic, that mic right there just gives you a bunch of distortion.
but wrap it in the same kind of material that we would have on the kit. Again, the lengths that Josh went to make this room aesthetically pleasing, I did everything I could to keep a minimal footprint from a stand perspective and also get custom wrapped microphones where applicable.
Can I also say that I didn't know what the drums looked like at the time, and neither did Solomon. And so when he kind of just, I think we said like a natural wood, and he did that. Then I sent the photo over to Mike from SJC, and he was like, "This is unbelievable. That's actually completely perfect with how the drums look right now." So that was a coincidence.
Absolute home run. We've got a Royer SF12 stereo ribbon that's on the front side of the room that you can't see right now.
It's a ribbon. It does really good at like the middle point. So like imagine if you pull like an elastic, like the top bit part and the bottom part won't really vibrate as much as say the middle. So you get this really, really, really nice buttery midsection. And it's in stereo. So the microphone itself has like an XY to it, or like there's a couple different versions of it. You see them lots on like guitar amps and stuff in studios and everything else. But now this is a room mic. So there's the overhead mic that gets like the really papery stuff. And you get the room mic. This gives you more like air movement and like the body of the drum kit. So it's like got this like whoop, whoop to it, right? As opposed to the papery clap, clap, clap of the overhead. And the balance of the two, you get really nice sounding distance and like punch and things out of your drum kit that you wouldn't get out of a close mic anyways.
But overheads, Coles 4038, and between that ribbon, this room just, we can
Comes
make it
alive.
as dead as we want, or we can make it come alive. So I'm really excited to hear drum samples come out of this room.
The drums are made by a company called SJC Drums. I've been working with them since probably 2012 or early 13, when we were still playing clubs. In my last home studio, I just, I would pull in kits that I had on the road. For this one, I called Mike and I said, I want a drum set that's specifically for this room. We'll probably never leave this room. I'll never tour with it. I just want to record with it, and I want it to sound good above anything else.
Acrylic drums don't sound great recorded either. Like they're cool and they're flashy and they sound really punchy live. They don't record well though.
So this one, we sat and we talked. I said, I said first and foremost, I want this one to sound good. Not that they don't all sound good, but specifically for this room.
Right.
And we talked on the phone for 45 minutes, kind of brainstorming what we wanted it to look like and feel like. And then probably halfway through, I was kind of like, Debbie loves tree houses, my wife. She loves the idea of a tree house. I proposed in a tree house in New Zealand. We kind of look at this house as a tree house a little bit. We're surrounded by trees. And that sort of informed some of the Dabs Mila's artwork a little bit as well. And so I said, what if we did sort of a tree-themed drum kit? And I sent over a couple of examples, and Mike just went to work. And
I love that.
He actually didn't want to show me progress along the way. He was like, this thing is turning out so good. I don't even want to show you until it's done. He did tell me about this idea. It's actually just, the front head is just a block of wood. And I said, I'm just worried about how it's going to sound, And he's like, just trust us. We're going to send you another, an actual normal kick drum head just in case. But he sent that, and I sat down and I played it, and I was like, this sounds great.
I couldn't believe
Somehow.
What a
it.
trip.
When you told me that the drum head was solid wood, I went to all of my friends and I'm like, okay, how's this gonna work? Because with the Low Freak and the D6, we've got another boundary mic inside, but I've never seen a mic or a drum set with a solid wood head on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
me
I talked
neither.
to Peacock, who came and dialed in the drum tones. I'm like, let's see what happens. And I remember we dialed in, like first 10 seconds, like, okay, this sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that was a major surprise. I wonder how many other drum sets we're gonna see now with solid wood.
Well,
drum
we'll
heads.
see. It also, I think this thing took a while this thing's custom made.
Right.
So I'm really happy with how that turned out. They just a lot
Very
of attention
cool.
to detail. They kind of engraved their logo here. They also did a couple of other engravings on the kit. One of Debbie and I's when we first started dating, she took me to where she grew up in Texas. Actually showed me her old high school. We sat on a bench and I carved in our initials.
Incredible.
So I sent over a photo, and they engraved our initials a couple times on each of these drums. The throne is basically a tree stump that's adjustable. You can adjust the height. I've never seen anything like that either.
Right.
They really went above and beyond on these
really
drums.
went above and
I think they
beyond.
sound phenomenal.
This is the first kit we've ever seen with 2 on the floor, right?
Yeah. That one Mike just threw in.
Right.
He's like, let's give you another drum. And I was like, if there's more drums, I'll hit them.
A design element that I have when I'm building studios is
It's like Josh's like a minimalist drummer, right? Like 2 on the floor is really common. But like I don't know if I've ever really seen Josh do that. But like floor toms in this kind of rock isn't like a floor tom in like jazz or R&B. Like you're not really going to it for pitches. You're going to it for punches, right? So I don't know.
I hate seeing cables. I don't know, maybe it's just a
Me too.
cleanliness thing on my side. But the cable structure and cable management in this whole studio is actually underneath the rug. There's floor pockets to the right and left of the kick drum, and we have everything ran through the floor pockets that run down the length of the floor into the control room, and then they're capped and stuffed so it doesn't bleed from one room to the next.
The idea is
The hole is capped and stuff. Like that's how detailed they're being. So where those cables actually feed through the wall and through everything, they've plugged those so that there's no external bleed. Because all you need is just a little bit of a low frequency coming from somewhere. Now I'm pulling it out of the recording, even though I'm getting it from my live room, right?
you kind of just walk in and you walk straight to the drums, and you don't have to step over any cables. You don't have to duck under
X's.
any boom mics
And
or
then-
anything like that. And it's very neat.
Very neat. I love that.
Another thing that we discussed early on in this process is being able to control a session from the drums.
Right.
And so a couple things that we did. Number one, when we're thinking about the idea of working remote, is setting up a camera. So just the other day, I did a session with my friend in LA where I recorded drums for his song, and I set up a camera. There's an HDMI port that goes right there. So I set it up right in front of the drums, and then over here I have a station where I can control my computer in there. And so we just sent a cable from there to pull up image on the monitor, and everything else can be controlled remotely. Also, I can just kind
He
of
makes that sound so easy. I'm so upset. All I want to do is be able to broadcast my recordings and my playing, or while I'm recording, to y'all and to my friends. It's all I want to do. And he's just like, yeah, we just like plugged in a microphone and had a camera and an HDMI, and I can control it all from here. Like,
come in here and operate that computer from right here. I can see what I'm doing, hit record, hit stop, delete everything I just did, record it again, and go through that cycle until I'm kind of happy with the take.
Fantastic.
So the idea that I can come down here and just hit record and play immediately, it frees me up a little bit, and it kind of feels a lot less daunting to kind of get kind of a session going, because I can be upstairs and think of something and then just kind of come down here and record it and know that, you know, it's going to sound good, but more important, I can do it immediately.
Right. Now that was one of the
when opportunity strikes, man, when inspiration strikes, you need to be able to get it tracked. You need to be able to put it down.
things I focus on most in designing a studio is making it so the artist can get the pen to the paper as quickly and as efficiently as possible without putting a ton of obstacles in the way of that process. I had made the last trip. We had tuned the room, we had dialed in drum tones, and we were just doing a couple finishing touches. I remember standing in the door and looking at you and like, I've had a blast building the studio, but at the end of the day, I have to leave. And it was like this really humbling thought to think of the fact that you just get to walk downstairs and then this is yours.
Like I said, I started playing drums walking to the music store, 15-minute walk from my parents' house, and I did that every day for about a year. And then I played in their basement.
I worked at a guitar store for a while, man, and kudos to Josh for making it. But I empathize with those drum store, guitar store folk.
I'll play drums anywhere. I rented out a loft in a friend's warehouse one time, and I played there for a while. And so to have a place at my house that I can just play drums at any time of the day, I feel really lucky to have that. I think about it all the time. You know, the idea of kind of moving back from LA, a place where there's sunshine constantly, to a place where there's a little more gray, you know, a good chunk of the year. To have a place that is personalized, it's bright, it's colorful, you know, it's got windows where the sun can come through, being able to walk down here and record stuff, I think that's priceless.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks again for having us over.
Thank you.
Fire, man. Fire. Oh, they do a building of? To do a building of? Oh, we might have to watch that too. Really cool video, man. Really cool video. Obviously a lot of it makes sense, and I could say that, like, you know, I'm trying to approach a lot of things in my studio the same way. I want to be able to walk in here, grab something and do it, or like if opportunity strikes, I do it in the videos with y'all a lot, so grab my acoustic guitar and play it. But I really want to get it to where it's like studio quality on the replay, not just off my mic, which is right here, just in case anyone's curious. But this was dope, man. 3/4 of an hour. I appreciate y'all hanging out. If you made it this far, come on, man. Give me that subscribe button. Give me that like button. Hit me up on Patreon. Send me your links and requests. Elizabeth, all my TOP, all my mod friends. See everyone soon.